Let's move on to the next topic. The next topic that we're going to be looking at is ranking every starting goalie in the Western Conference. We are going to be starting. We'll start with one. Because you can probably assume who I have at number one in terms of Western starting goalies. Number one is UC Saros. This shouldn't be that controversial, but UC Saros over the past 3 years has led the entire NHL and goals saved above expected the last 3 years in total because Sorokin wasn't really playing too much 2-3 years ago. Same with Shesterkin. He has been a top 5 goalie each of the last 3 years. He's posted a 927, then a 918, then a 919. And mind you, the last 2 years, they have not been that good of a team in front of him. They've been injured. The defense has not nearly been as good, and he has still posted fantastic results. I think he's better than our number 2 in Connor Hellebuck. Hellebuck's also fantastic. Hellebuck's 6 years has been insanely consistent. He's been over a 910 every single year. He's been a Vezina finalist 3 out of those 6 years. I don't think he should have been last year, but he definitely should have been 4th. And last year, he was 4th in the entire NHL with 30.8 expected goals, saved above expected. But you look at him, I think he does need to get out of Winnipeg. He just needs to go to a team where he doesn't have to play 65 games a year. And I think he can be even better because you look at him this year, he kind of gassed towards the end of the year. He started out the first 2 to 3 months. He was kind of the Vezina favorite because Ullmark, we were still like, this isn't legit. He's not going to keep this up. But Connor Hellebuck was legit like 927 with 2-3-5 and a sick record when the Winnipeg Jets were leading the Central Division. He was the Vezina favorite, but again, he has so many miles on him. 4 out of the last 6 years, he's led the entire league in saves and games started. So hopefully he ages fine, but I hope he just gets out of Winnipeg for his own sake so he doesn't have to play so much. Stud goalie, easily my 5th best goalie in the NHL. Moving on, Jake Ottinger. I think the hype is a little bit too high right now. He's a very good goalie. I don't think that he's an elite goalie right now. Last year, he posted a solid 919 and a 2.35 as well as 11.8 goals saved above expected. I keep on flubbing up that word, which was, I believe, 14th in the entire NHL. So his first 3 years, he's been all above a 910. He's a very good goalie. We got to see him get to that next gear yet. He obviously helped lead the Dallas Stars to Western Conference Finals. He had a couple bad games, but besides that, overall, he was pretty solid. He's going to be in the Vezina talks this year, I think, just because Dallas is going to be such a good team. Is he actually as good as a Shesterkin, a Saros, a Sorokin? I don't think quite yet, but he's only 24 years old. That's the other thing. I see he's definitely getting overhyped by some people as being like the next great American goalie or the next just goalie period in the NHL. I think some of that's ridiculous, but also people are shitting on him, and it's like, dude, he's 24 years old, and he did just post like a top 10 goalie season. He's going to be very good. Shesterkin and Saros. Shesterkin, Saros, Sorokin weren't even starting at full-time at age 24. Meanwhile, he's playing 62 games a year. He's going to be a stud. Next up, I got Thatcher Demko. Pretty controversial guy. He posted back-to-back seasons of 915 save percentage, was pretty easily a top 12 goalie, probably top 10. But then he stunk to start this year. Looking at the stats, he posted a 4-10-2 record with an 883 and a 3.75. The Canucks as a whole were brutal. If you remember, they lost their first 9 or 10 games, and he was part of that for sure. But then he got hurt, comes back from injury. Down the stretch, he posted a 918 and a 253. I tend to think that he's closer to that goalie that he showed down the stretch of being an elite guy in the 910s versus absolute dog in the 880s. So I think he's closer to that. Maybe I have him a couple spots too high on this, but I'm willing to bet on a bounce back because he has carried pretty bad Vancouver Canucks teams to decent records over the past couple years. He's a stud, no doubt, number one. Philip Gustafsson, weird guy to rank because on a per game basis, it was either him and Ullmark for the best goalie in the entire NHL last year. He posted a 931 and a 210. I just haven't really seen that track record yet. It was only 39 games. He wasn't that good in Ottawa the prior year. So I think the Minnesota system overall, I'm going to talk about it with another guy that's a lot lower on the list. Minnesota goalies tend to put up good numbers in part just because Minnesota's defensive system is so effective. They have such great defensemen. Their forwards forecheck all the time. They're just an elite defensive team. So that might have something to do with it. But like a Jake Ottinger, Gustafsson's I think still only 24 years old. So even if he wasn't actually like the second pure game, best goalie in the entire league. I think going forward, he's going to be a very good starter. I hope he gets the lion's share of the starts over Fleury. I could see them for some reason like feeding Fleury. I think that'd be the wrong call. Next up, Alexander Georgiev. He was a guy in the New York Rangers that was very inconsistent. I watch a decent amount of Ranger games just because I'm from the New Jersey area. But it was either like he balled out, had a shutout, or like one goal against on like a 950 plus save percentage, or he'd get lit the hell up. It was really consistency with him. He always had the flashes of the talent, but obviously the Rangers decided to go with Shesterkin, clearly the right call. Basically told Georgiev to pack his bags, and he was very good for the Avalanche in his first season. I think he had like a 9-10, very good advanced stats as well. It's going to be interesting to see because we saw Philip Grubauer be a Vezina finalist, although he was overrated even in that season, and then he left and he wasn't that good. Or is he a Darcy Kemper that is just a good goalie that got plugged into that Colorado system but can produce without? We won't know until he eventually heads to a different team if that ever happens. So right now I can't put him too high, but the stats are undeniable. He had a great record last year, 62 starts, I think. He like almost led the entire NHL in starts, as well as 919 in good expected goals. I think he is a top 15 goalie right now. You got to give him up that track record. Although Colorado is fantastic, you don't just accidentally start 60 games and put up good numbers like that. Moving on to number 7, Vejmelka. This is a weird one. He posted an 899 and a 343, but his advanced stats were fantastic. He was just on a horrible Coyotes team. That jersey is sick. I might have to get that, a Clayton Keller version of that. But he posted fantastic advanced stats. He was like 13th in the entire league in goals saved above expected. He was pretty bad his first year, but again, the Coyotes are just so bad. I think on a better team, he'd be a good starter. I think he'd be able to post like a 914 as well as decent advanced stats. Obviously, posted decent advanced stats in Arizona, but I think he's an underrated guy that has a track record now and going forward. Arizona should be a good team next year, and I think he's going to take that next step and get that respect because Arizona won't be so bad next year. He's not going to be put up like an 899. I could see him put up like a 907 next year. A 3.1, which still isn't that good, but considering Arizona's number one defenseman is like Valimaki, those are pretty good numbers. Next up, Aiden Hill. I'm going to get called recency bias for this, and I understand it because he did have that fantastic salary. I almost said salary cap instead of Stanley Cup. He had that fantastic Stanley Cup run of a 932 and a 217, but I don't think it's that much recency bias. He has been a very good backup. The past couple of years, he has a 913 and a 261, as well as decent advanced stats in terms of the last 4 years in a backup role. And he's only 26 years old. So I think this is just him kind of breaking out. I think next year on a Vegas team, he could start 50, 55 games. The other problem is Logan Thompson's like almost as good as him, in my opinion. So it'll be interesting to see which one. You could probably replace the two, and they're like about the same on this list. But I think Aiden Hill, if you let him run with it, he can give you a 915 full season. I don't think that's ridiculous at all. Maybe even a 916, 917 just because Vegas is that good, as well as 30 to 33 wins, let's say. I think he's really going to surprise some people. He's not going to be posting a 932 like he did in the playoffs, but I think he's going to be a solid starter. I know I'm going to get shit on for that, but I'll take it. Stuart Skinner, very solid rookie year, posted a 913 and a 275 and had like a 3 goals saved above expected. He's only 24, 25 years old, so I think he's only going to progress. At this point, he's an average to above average starter. I think next year he's going to be an above average starter. Will he get to like a Vezina level? I could see him maybe like being Vezina talks a year or two just because the Edmonton Oilers are such a good team that he wins 37 games one year or 39 games one year and posts a 921 and 2-3. Like I can see that, but like in terms of talent, I don't know if he has that kind of talent. He's just in a fantastic spot. But overall, I think he's a solid goalie. He kind of shat the bed in the playoffs. Don't get me wrong. That was kind of very disappointing, but I'm not gonna let one series versus the Kings and the Knights completely change my opinion on him, especially because he is so young. I think he's only gonna get better. Markstrom, I might get some hate for having Markstrom behind Skinner, but again, Skinner was no doubt better last year and is younger. Who do we think is going to have the better season next year? I'm going to go with the younger and guy that was better last year. Markstrom was the Vezina runner-up 2 years ago, but even I think that was overrated. You look at him from an advanced stats point, goals saved above expected, he was 12th in the entire league. That year, 2022, Freddie, Soros, Vasilevsky all should have finished ahead of him in the Vezina. He just racked up a bunch of wins and had a good save percentage and good goals against on a pretty loaded Flames team. He was definitely good, don't get me wrong, but I think that 2022 Vezina runner-up is a little overrated. People are going to cite this when they say, oh, he's way too low. I don't think he is, but he's still okay. He had an 899 this year, which was 892, which was the worst of his career. He lets up some of the worst goals in the entire league. Like whatever, like what's this thing with him? Like the first shot, he like lets up the most first shot in the league goals. Like he needs to just be more consistent. I think he can bounce back, but he is 32 or 33, so his best days are probably behind him. I don't think that's that controversial. The Flames would be lucky to get average to above average starter play out of him. They're going to have to move off that contract once Dustin Wolf is ready to go, but it's going to be very interesting. Next up, Philip Grubauer. This 11 and 12 is going to be a little tough for me. I honestly don't know who to choose. Grubauer was absolutely horrendous last year. He posted one of the worst like goalie seasons ever in terms of like stats, but also Seattle was just a horrible team last year, so I can't really hold it too much against him. The advanced stats are bad, but when you start so bad on such a bad team, you're not going to like rally the rest of the way. This year, again, he didn't have the best regular stats. They were pretty below average, but he did post a negative 0.7 goals saved above expected, so he was about average during the regular season. And then he was massive in terms of the playoffs for them in that first round against Colorado. He really stood on his head. He was very good in the first couple games against Dallas. He did get lit up in the final 3 games. But I think going forward, you can rely on him to be an okay average starting goalie, which stinks because they still have like 4 more years at $6 million, 5.9 that they're paying him. But I think Grubauer, he wasn't a Vezina, when he was a Vezina finals in Colorado, that was absolute BS. But he's not as bad as he was the following year, first year in Seattle. I think he's somewhere in the middle there of like the 21st or 22nd best starting goalie in the entire league. I think that's about fair. Next up is oh my God, we got Gibson. Next up, we got Gibson. Weird guy, man. I think he is overrated just because of what he did in prior years. I don't think that he's horrendous. If you go off just what he did in the last 4 years, he has consistently been bad. He's posted an average like negative 12 goals saved above expected in the past 4 years. He has not had a single good year, and it is in part because the Ducks are a bad team. But you look at this guy, he's not the player that he used to be, and sometimes that happens with these goalies that start off so hot when they're young. The mileage just starts to rack up. It's what I hope doesn't happen with Connor Hellebuck. But he started out fantastic, and also because the Ducks did have a very good defense core back then. But he started when they had Manson, Lindholm, Fowler. They were loaded. But yeah, the mile has finally caught up to him. Can he be an okay starter this year, or okay starter if he got traded? I think it's possible, but the days of him being in Vezina talks like 2017, 2018, I think that's well gone. Still, I can't, if you blind resumed him the last 4 years, he would have a case to be like 15 or 16. I'm going to somewhat respect him just because of what he's done prior. Maybe he can find that gear, but as of right now, I don't know. Number 13, Phoenix Copley. An okay 1B. It is a little scary that LA is heading into the season probably as him as their 1A. Cam Talbot's up there too, but we'll see who gets the starting job. I put Copley just because he was a decent starter last year. He posted a 9.03 with a 2.63. So those are okay, like not ideal. They're okay by today's standards. I think the average save percentage is like 9.06. He's okay. It's nothing special, but if he can give them like a 9.08, that'll be a very solid year for him. He's definitely like probably like the 30th best goalie in hockey, I'd say. There's a lot of backups. There's a couple backups that are better than him. It's not good for LA. Binnington, number 14, he had a 9.01 and a 3.13 last year when the Blues were like a 110-point team. He still sucked. Then this year, he absolutely falls off a cliff with an 8.94 and a 3.31. It's just been a steady decline to the point, and given his attitude, given how he's just like a psychopath. I don't think he's going to turn it around. It has been rookie year fantastic, then like above average starter, then average, then the past 2 years bad, bad, bad. I don't think he's going to turn it around. I would say I hope he turns it around, but he's such an unlikable guy that I really don't. Yeah, not cool. Not a cool guy. Capo Kakinen, weird goalie. He's still pretty young. He was very good in Minnesota, in San Jose 2 seasons ago. He had a 912 save percentage as well as like decent advanced stats. Then he has a full year in San Jose this year and absolutely stinks. He had an 883 and a 3.85, which was the worst numbers among a starter besides like Elvis Merzlikins, who was god awful this year. So he was among the guys that started like over 35 games last year. He's probably the worst goalie in the entire NHL, him or Elvis. So I think maybe he can turn around. Definitely that was impacted because he was on LA, who was horrendous last year. But going back to Gustafsson, as I mentioned, the Minnesota. Why am I saying Minneapolis? Going back to the Minnesota goalies, I think there might be something too. Like you see how when the Carolina goalies leave their system, they kind of fall off. I think we might be seeing something like that with Minnesota when their goalies come in, they look very good. Then once they leave, they're not very good. So when looking at Kakinen, can he pull it around, turn it around? It's possible. He could be a half decent. His regular stats are going to suck this year just because the San Jose Sharks suck. Him and Mackenzie Blackwood will probably have to play a ton of games, but he's still young enough where I maybe could see him turn around. A guy that is in dead last, 16th, that I can't really see turning around is Petr Mrazek. This year, 894, 3.66. He was better than Kakinen last year, but at age 31 on a horrible Chicago Blackhawks team, I just can't see him turn it around. Kakinen and I at least have some upside. I think Mrazek, or you can go with Soderblom, but I still think he's young and his stats were also pretty bad at the NHL level. I think Mrazek is slated to get absolutely slaughtered with shots on net this year on a bad Chicago team. We could be talking like 885 and like a 3.9. It's like somehow even worse than last year. It's going to be very interesting. Chicago's going to have to find their goalie of the future eventually, not right now. But yeah, overall, this is the full list. Saros, Hellebuck, Ottinger, Demko, Gustafsson, Georgiev, Vejmelka, Hill, Skinner, Markstrom, Grubauer, Gibson, Copley, Bennington, Kakinen, Mrazek.